I decided to make my presentation on a criminal that I personally had never heard of until I did some research, and it kind of shocked me because he is named as one of the most notorious serial killers of the world, right under Ted Bundy. So I figured if he's right under Ted Bundy, he must be pretty serious. His name is Pedro Lopez, and he is more known as the Monster of the Andes. So going into my presentation, first we'll talk about the background, looking into his past, his childhood. Then we'll move on to the victims and the crimes and talk about his crime scenes, his motives, some pictures of some of his victims. Then we'll go into the timeline, which covers his whole life, when he was arrested, things like that. And then we'll go into the conclusion about where he is now and why he is considered a cold case. So starting with the background with parental figures, Pedro Lopez was the seventh out of 13 children, and he was born to a prostitute. So at home, he was exposed to many acts of prostitution, which I can assume was not healthy and only scarred him. And his father was dead, so he couldn't step in or anything like that. Leaving home after he was caught by his mother at the age of 8 for fondling his younger sister, he was kicked out of his home by his mother to the streets and committed several crimes to survive. He would rob people, rob cars, sell cars, steal cars, and so on. Early offenses, Lopez got immense joy from fondling his sister and stated, "I lost my innocence at age 8, so I decided to do the same to as many young girls as I could." Next, we move on to victims and crime. Victimology and evidence. He would search village markets and look for selective young girls that looked like people of innocence and beauty, who looked like a good girl always working with her mother. That was his quotes. He was later tricked by police to confessing specific details to a priest. So the MO and signature of Pedro Lopez, he would spot a girl that he liked in the village market like we talked about, and he would follow her and her mother for 3 days, waiting for a moment when the girl would be away from the mother. When he got the girl's attention, he would then lure them away by promising them with small gifts, but then instead he would take them away to a secret hideaway with his prepared graves. And then, in order to kill them, he would cuddle them during the night, and then he would strangle and rape her at sunrise, because he never wanted to kill them at night, because he wanted to wait until it was daylight out so he could see the victim's face while she died. After he killed the girls, he would have parties with them by propping up 3 or 4 of them in a grave, like at a table area, or like not even at a table, just sitting upright. He would sit them up so that he could have a party with them, and he would talk to them as if they were alive. And then when he got bored of those 3 or 4, he would go back on the hunt to find more girls. Based on the findings, I have concluded that Pedro Lopez is an organized and social offender. He was able to kidnap many girls without being caught, many times, considering his victim count. And he took his time with each victim. He took the time to cuddle them at night. He took the time to dig them a grave. He took the time to have a party. And he was secretive enough to never get caught. And not only that, but he was able to, in the future, he was released from prison several times, several different prisons. So he got out on good behavior, which to me is very sociable and organized, because you wouldn't let that type of person out of prison unless they were actually super good. So he was able to fake his emotions and his actions, because then once he got out of prison, he was right back on the hunt. So he was able to trick these police. So to me, that considers him organized. So these are just some of the crime scene photos, obviously. There's the skull in the grave, some of the little girl's shoes, sadly. The one in the bottom left is the picture of a missing girl and people, I would assume, finding her remains. And then the bottom right picture is a couple of the young girls. That's how young they were. So moving on, I talked about his victim count without actually showing the numbers, so here they are. He was convicted for 110 victims, even though he admitted to killing 300. And whenever he was confessing to the police, he gave them the exact location of the graves, and the police were able to find 53 different graves. So this is a picture of some of the victims, obviously not all of them, because he did kill over 300 people, and some of them were never identified, some of them never found, so these are just the ones that they were able to account for. And I know I said many were young girls, but he ranged from like 7 to 12 years old. I would assume a couple more here or there, but his preference was younger girls. Some of the males, he got into a gang issue in jail, and he murdered people in jail, which is why there are some male figures on the victim sheet. And this was a quote by Pedro Lopez that I found very interesting. He said that he picked the victims he did, majority being young girls, because they were more gentle and trusting, more innocent. And honestly, that just made me sick to my stomach, so I thought it was good to put in there considering the assignment. And then we move on to the timeline. So in 1948, he was born. In 1957, that was whenever he was caught for fondling his own sister at the age of 8. In 1978, he had admitted to killing over 100 girls already. By 1980, he was arrested and stood trial for 110 murders with a maximum sentence of 16 years, and this caused a huge outrage because it was obviously announced through the news that he was caught because people wanted relief that this monster was off the streets. And whenever they found out he could only get a maximum of 16 years, considering how many young, innocent people he had killed, they were furious that he did not get life. In 1983, he had gone through the whole trial and was found guilty, but he was also diagnosed as clinically insane, so they relocated him to a psychiatric facility to finish his sentence. And then by 1998, he was released early on good behavior, which honestly shocked me because I do not know how police would look at him. And, like, to me, it doesn't matter what his behavior was. What he did completely outweighs any chance of him getting out of jail. But that's just me. And today his whereabouts are still unknown as of 2021. They still have no idea where he is. So in conclusion, due to his release in 1998, he immediately fled to a new location so that he wasn't caught again. The new location, along with his current whereabouts, are still unaccounted for, and it is still unknown to this day if he has killed any more victims, but he is still wanted by police. And that's my presentation on Pedro Lopez. I hope it was a killer that no one has ever heard of, because I had never heard of him. So I hope it was interesting. I know it's a sad situation considering his victim choice and how many victims he did have, but I hope everyone liked the presentation.